There is an unspoken rule in naval architecture that when a ship looks right, it sails right too. And for centuries, designers have chased a perfect synthesis of hydrodynamic grace and terrifying lethality. We build these images of these elegant predators, the razor-thin lines of modern destroyers, or the low-slung silhouettes of World War II battleships. But what happens when an engineering problem is so unforgiving, or a nation's strategic reality so desperate, that function violently cannibalizes form? These are the brutalist anomalies, the mechanical abominations, and the floating paradoxes. Ships so chaotic, top-heavy, or fundamentally unhinged, that their sheer ugliness carved them into naval legend. In 1961, the United States Navy attempted to build the future. The USS Long Beach was intended to be the ultimate herald of the atomic age. The first nuclear-powered guided missile cruiser. From the waterline to the main deck, she was a predator, a sharp, hydrodynamic arrow designed to outpace carrier strike groups. But looking above the deck reveals a jarring, almost offensive departure from naval tradition. Rising from her midsection was a massive, windowless, sheer-sided aluminium cube. It looked like a Soviet apartment block, dropped unceremoniously onto a sleek hull. The Navy didn't build this sea cube out of architectural malice, they were held hostage by bleeding-edge technology. The Long Beach was the testbed for the revolutionary system, the AN-32 and 33 phased array radars. Decades before the compact, flat-panel Aegis systems of today, these early electronic eyes were gigantic, heavy, and extremely temperamental. They required completely flat, rigid, multi-story bulkheads to function. There was no room for sloping lines or aerodynamic tapers. The engineers simply had to build a box. The psychological impact on traditional sailors was immediate. The massive block made the ship visibly top-heavy and acted like a giant sail in high winds, causing an agonizing, snappy roll in heavy seas. It was a disaster that completely abandoned stealth for raw, unapologetic sensor power, a crude but necessary stepping stone that dragged naval warfare into the electronic age. Necessity is the mother of invention, but total war is the mother of abominations. In 1915, the Kingdom of Italy was locked in a brutal stalemate along the Isonzo River. They possessed a surplus of massive, 15-inch 40-caliber naval guns stripped from the cancelled Francesco Carocciolo-class battleships. What they completely lacked was a ship capable of bringing these guns to bear against the Austro-Hungarian coastal fortifications. The solution was the Faidy Bruno. To call it a warship is an insult to maritime engineering. It was in essence a mechanized floating trench. Engineers took a flat-bottomed steel barge, welded a crude triangular bow to the front, and in a stroke of sheer desperation, poured tons of reinforced concrete directly into the hull. They needed immense dead weight to stop the violent recoil of the 15-inch guns from capsizing the ship, or should we say raft. The guns themselves were housed in an open-top turret wearing a sloping, heavily armored roof that earned the vessel its nickname, the concrete sombrero. Powered by two salvaged, asthmatic and ill, torpedo boat engines, the Faidy Bruno dragged itself through the water at an agonizing 3 knots. For the crew trapped inside, it was a dark, damp, concrete tomb that shook violently with every deafening broadside. It lacked any grace, maneuverability, or dignity. Yet, this hideous, concrete-filled barge survived the grinding attrition of World War I only to be captured and used again in World War II. Proving that sometimes, the ugliest tool in the shed is the hardest to break. The Imperial Japanese Navy did not set out to build a monster. When the Fusō and her sister ship Yamashiro were laid down before World War I, they were relatively conventional dreadnought battleships. But as the decades dragged on, the relentless pace of naval evolution forced a bizarre mutation. In the 1930s, naval engagements required seeing the enemy before they saw you. This meant mounting heavier optical rangefinders, Type 94 fire control directors, new searchlights, and modern anti-aircraft platforms. Unable to afford completely new hulls, Japanese engineers chose a simple solution: they just kept stacking. Layer by layer, platform by platform, the central bridge was built upward, weaving around the forward tripod mast. It ballooned into a chaotic, 150-foot-tall steel labyrinth known as the Pagoda Mast. The Fusō had mutated from a dreadnought into a mechanical skyscraper. We have a video about the strange pagoda masts. It's one of our best preforming videos. We have linked it in the description if you wish to learn more. The psychological toll on the crew stationed in these towers were immense. Standing 15 stories above the waterline, spotters endured terrifying, pendulum-like sways in heavy Pacific swells. Western observers mocked the vessels, convinced a strong gale or a single torpedo would capsize the top-heavy ships. It was a disorganized scaffolding of blind spots. Yet, it did give the Japanese a staggering visual horizon. It was an intimidating and aggressive silhouette, however, born from the refusal to let an obsolete hull die. We will conclude this video with the ultimate failure of maritime design. In the 1870s, Imperial Russia tasked Vice Admiral Andrei Popov with an impossible mandate to design a heavily armored, massively armed coastal defense vessel that could navigate the incredibly shallow, muddy depths of the Dnieper River. Popov's solution was a total rejection of the classic length-to-beam ratio. He reasoned that a completely circular hull would displace enough water to float 11-inch rifled muzzleloaders and 9-inch thick armor plating, while only drafting 13 feet of water. Thus, the Novgorod was born. On paper, the math worked. In the water, it was a hydrodynamic tragedy. The circular hull created a colossal wall of drag. Water didn't flow around the ship, instead it caught the blunt curved edges, making the vessel agonizingly slow and almost impossible to steer. Even a mild river current would grab the flat bottom and send the entire ship into an uncontrolled, sweeping rotation. A popular naval myth claims the recoil of her own gun spun her like a top, but the reality was far more mundane and humiliating. Her engines and rudder simply could not fight the physics of her own shape. The crew suffered from relentless, disorienting motion sickness just trying to keep the boat pointed forward. The Novgorod was an engineering dead end, a profound misunderstanding of fluid dynamics that remains the roundest, weirdest, and most spectacular design crime in naval history. There is a strange reverence reserved for the ugly ducklings of the sea. They were not built to look good in propaganda reels or fleet reviews. The sea cube, the concrete sombrero, the pagoda skyscrapers, and the iron pancake, these vessels are the physical embodiment of compromise and desperation. They are forensic evidence of the moment engineers chose raw utility over traditional beauty. They remind us that on the unforgiving expanse of the ocean, survival doesn't belong to the sleekest or the most beautiful. It belongs to the machine that can get the job done, no matter how hideous it will look while doing so. From the gun decks to the bridge, every story we tell honors those who served. If this tale made you feel the salt and steel of history, give it a like, and if you're not yet part of our channel's convoy, subscribe and join the ranks. More powerful stories await.